Dunkirk is a visual spectacle, but is it actually a good movie with effective storytelling as well? That's the question I had on my mind when I watched it the very first time back in 2017. Sitting there in the theater, I just kept on thinking whether the movie is actually that good, or is it just some editing magic that tricks us into thinking that the movie is interesting and keeps us on the edge of our seats all the time. It was that exact moment when I thought someone on YouTube should probably break the movie up into three sub-movies according to the three narrative storylines presented in the movie. In last couple of years, I have seen a lot of Dunkirk reviews on YouTube and just kept on wondering that none of these reviewers tried to analyze Dunkirk by splitting it up into its three narrative lines. So finally, I decided to do it myself. I did it mainly because I thought Christopher Nolan has used his non-linear storytelling style to sensationalize a regular story, and I just wanted to see if that's actually true or not by analyzing all three narratives on their own. I must say it was an interesting exercise. I started splitting up various sequences in the movie timeline as they appeared into three different segments and eventually converted them into their own timelines named after their themes: Mole, Sea, and Air. Dunkirk depicts 1 week of the Mole narrative in about 60 minutes, 1 day of the Sea narrative in 35 minutes, and 1 hour of the Air narrative in around 25 minutes. There is a lot of back and forth between these narratives. Some of the scenes in story have been shown from various angles and perspectives according to which narrative they fall into at that specific time. Nolan obviously worked really hard in filming these scenes, as I couldn't really find any substantial continuity errors. For instance, here, this scene is being shown from Air perspective, and the same scene is shown from Sea perspective. And as these two scenes are actually placed a bit far from each other in the timeline, I actually thought there would be some issues with how the plane hits the water or how its fan blades stopped rotating and there's this one blade spiking out of water prominently. But to my surprise, this wasn't the case, and the landing matched perfectly in both cases. At the same time, although the movie has been shot stunningly with some top-notch cinematography, if we judge the three narratives on their own, they don't really offer much to the audience. They're just some regular stories told in a very linear style. Some of the scenes don't even make any sense at all. They're just some regular straightforward scenes of someone shooting someone, or someone just driving his board, or flying a Spitfire through clouds chasing the enemy. For instance, if we just take a look at these scenes, they were placed after cutting from other narratives, but not a lot of meaningful action or story unfolding in these scenes. And that's where the magic of editing kicks in. Either Nolan himself or his editors, or probably both of them together, must have spent unimaginable number of hours to make the cuts and turn an otherwise pretty straightforward movie into a bit more thrilling and exciting trip for the viewer. As soon as I started analyzing these three narratives on their own, it became apparent to me that this wasn't really a war movie. So I checked on IMDb just to make sure what genre is Dunkirk listed in. And as I suspected, it's listed in action, drama, and history genres, but it's not listed as a war movie. That intrigued me further to go to IMDb help page, where they have defined different genres they place movies in. And according to this page, a war movie should contain numerous scenes and or a narrative that pertains to a real war. Well, according to this definition, I believe Dunkirk should fall under the war genre, but it's still not listed as a war movie, and I personally agree to this sentiment to much extent. After all, Nolan did decide not to show a single enemy soldier anyway, so I think it's probably fair to call it an action drama and not a war movie. It can easily be seen through Dunkirk that Nolan took a lot of inspiration from Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket and Francis Coppola's Apocalypse Now. Just like both these directors, Nolan also wanted to make not just another run-of-a-mill war movie. He clearly wanted to come up with something that portrays the real horror of war. A movie that can show us that there is so much terror and chaos during the war where no one knows no one, and it doesn't really matter what your name or background is. What really matters is the task at hand and survival. It seems like Nolan wanted to depict the real horrors of war by not giving names to most of the characters in Dunkirk, throwing so many random and temporary soldiers our way. So many scenes not making sense at all, and so many people running from the unknown and aiming towards nowhere most of the time. While Nolan did succeed in making his action-packed sequences more thrilling and cinematic, but in my opinion, he probably didn't fully succeed in depicting war horror to full extent. Most of the sequences in the movie were less coherent and more like a series of random events. I understand if Nolan didn't want to build up the character of various actors or even scenes, but where he should have or probably could have put more emphasis is character building of the war itself. And that's where both Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now have succeeded in my point of view. Both Kubrick and Coppola have so masterfully focused on building up a horror movie-like character of the war, which gets audience immersed in the movie without even thinking that they are watching horror. Audience gets so invested in the theme and horrible presence of war-torn areas and people that they totally forget they have to worry about the names of characters and soldiers shown on the screen. And that's the real horror of war. You get immersed into and imprisoned by your surroundings. Most of the things in life don't matter to you anymore. And what really matters to you is survival at any cost. All this being said, I must say I really enjoyed watching Dunkirk because it was such a good entertainment after all. And what I really admire about Nolan is his perseverance to achieve a cinematic adventure every time he decides to go ahead and make a movie. In this era of sequels after sequels of superhero and other ridiculously useless movies, at least he is trying to be genuine, bringing new and mind-bending ideas or concepts almost every time. I think it's people like him and Denis Villeneuve who are at least trying their best to keep the spirit of cinema alive. And we definitely do need more people like them. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.
You will not laugh. You will not cry.